I got the Garmin Fenix 7X Pro Solar yesterday. This might turn into a furious rant because I'm in kind of disbelief about this watch. Maybe it's me that has completely misinterpreted what I'm supposed to expect from it or what it can do. But I spent last night fiddling around with it, and two issues that I'm facing. One is the hardware, one is the software, sort of the user interface and the universe doesn't seem to fit the bill at all. So I navigate almost 100% with my phone, just an Apple, some iPhone. I don't even know what model it is. The thing is that you're always having to pull your phone out. It's in lock screen. It's kind of big, and in the winter you're reaching into your pocket and stuff like that. And I just heard that the GPS watches are a good option. I know a lot of people that use them. A couple years ago, I was out with one of my buddies. He had the Fenix 6, I think. Seemed to be working fine for him. So I looked into it after a trip that we did, and I just found it too expensive. I ended up picking up the Garmin Instinct, which also doesn't really impress me, but it's cheap. I want something that can replace using my iPhone as my mapping tool. I picked up the Garmin Fenix 7X, and because if you go online, every review, everyone says this is the watch you need to get. It's the best. There's tons of comparison videos out there. The Garmin Fenix 7 versus the Apple Watch, and everyone just says, if you're doing real stuff, this is the one that matters. This is the one to get. So I got it, and let me tell you, this guy is not. If you've looked into this, it's expensive. I paid over $1,000 Canadian. I think it was 1,200. When I told my wife that the price last night and that I was pretty disappointed with it, she was pretty surprised about how much I paid for it. So first of all, loading it up, it took forever to download all of the maps and everything that comes with it. And there's only one set of maps, the sort of Garmin Topo Active or something like that. So you have a limited mapping system, and you have to download it all. It took 4 hours to download the maps onto the watch. Let's put that aside because that's a one-time deal. I don't care, you do it once. First thing I did was, let's try and get some of my routes on there from Gaia. So I work a lot with different mapping. I'm used to exporting to GPS, importing, doing everything. So you have to use Garmin Explore and Garmin Connect to get anything onto the watch. The two softwares don't talk to each other that much. So you have Garmin Explore on your desktop computer, Garmin Connect on your desktop computer, Connect and Explore on your phone, and then I'm working from Gaia to pull different things off. First of all, it won't pull Gaia GPX files into Connect. It'll pull them into Explore as tracks, or let me just check what it's called. It's so confusing. Tracks, routes, and courses. So tracks and routes are really similar in Garmin Explore. It's just that the tracks have way more granularity. The points, you can have up to 10,000 points for a track, whereas a route can only have 200. It's much more crude. So if you take a GPX file, load it into Explore, transfer it to your watch, you end up with every single little dot as a waypoint almost, and the image on the watch almost impossible because there's so many dots. So what you really need to use is a course. The problem is that you can't convert a track or route to a course in Explore. So you have to somehow go through Garmin Connect, or you can convert those files to a course, which is a much sort of more smoothed out route on the Garmin Explore app on your phone, and then get it onto the GPS watch. So if you've ever used Garmin Explore, it's so crude. It feels like you're using a website from 2010 or 2000 even. it's so archaic. It doesn't crosstalk well with Garmin Connect. When you go into Garmin Connect on the desktop, you can create courses with that kind of Snap to style map like Gaia if there's a trail there. But there's less trails. Like I was trying to create the same course in Garmin Connect versus Gaia, and not all the trails show up in Garmin Connect, but they're snapping to an invisible line in some places. So it's really frustrating. I use Gaia, people talk about Gaia, CalTopo, whatever. It's crazy that the flipping between, I have to have 3 desktop apps open, whereas with Gaia, I plan my route on my PC or my desktop computer. I open the app, I flick it, it refreshes, and I'm good to go. I can also plan those routes pretty well on the app if I have to, and I often have multiple versions of a route that I'm planning to do saved on my phone, and I can see them all overlaid. I don't always sort of do the route, I just have it on the map. So that gets into how I use my phone for navigation, and that's more to do with well, I'll get into the interface on the watch after. But this is before you've even used the watch. You're getting frustrated between all of these different softwares and mapping systems that, it's Garmin. To me, Garmin is supposed to be a leader in GPS and mapping, but they have what seems to me to be the most arcane, archaic, whatever the word is, I don't know, softwares out there. They're terrible. They're awful. So now I'm forced to use an awful software to try and use a watch versus a pretty good software with Gaia. And you sort of don't know what's happening. You're importing something. Are you refreshing it there? Is it gonna go onto the watch? The watch is syncing. It's very strange. User interface, the sort of software universe between what's on your phone, what's on your desktop computer, and what's on the watch is kind of a mystery. It seems to be designed more than anything for people who want to use the Connect app and collect little badges for their workouts. It doesn't seem to be for people who want to do kind of serious navigation. If you manage to get your system all set up and you get it onto your watch, then you're looking at this, what I consider a pretty terrible user interface. So yes, it does have a touch screen. The screen's pretty dim, but whatever. I'll overlook a lot of things. But I wanted to use this watch to navigate. Instead of having to pull my phone out, just have literally a mapping system on my arm, I can navigate. So that's all that interests me. Obviously, people say it's not a GPS handheld unit that has, a big screen. I get it. You're dealing with a more limited size screen. We're in 2024. I feel like it should be possible to do some of these things. So I'll just open up a map or a route. So I'll go maps, navigate. This is courses that I loaded on here. Fording River Pass. I have a trip report of this route. I'll zoom in, and this is the first thing that bugs me, is the responsiveness. You zoom by using the buttons. I'm used to a phone that you just, I keep on wanting to go and kind of scroll or zoom by pinching, just because now it's pulled up a coordinate, all right, so I can move around. And this is the big thing. Look at this. When I'm out using my maps, I'm constantly zooming and scrolling to look at, where I'm going, because I'm not always following trails. I'm navigating. I have a rough idea of where I want to go, but I'm navigating. So I'm making decisions based on the terrain. There I go. I wanted to zoom there. So, as I'm moving in and out, it's pulling up these panels, and you have to wait for it to refresh. All right, so we're refreshing, but not over there. Now, if I zoom out, I gotta wait for it to refresh. Gotta wait for it to refresh. Now I'll zoom around. That panel's not loaded yet. So to me, this thing is just completely underpowered, first of all. This isn't the end of the world, but the map itself is not super detailed. I was expecting at this point for a watch that's over $1,000 to be able to have satellite images, because I use satellite images a lot when I'm out in the field. You know, so I'm looking at a pretty crude topo map, which is fine. Like, a topo map's great, but because it's such a small screen, you know, you don't get a full perspective, and I think there's better topo maps out there. I really like the Gaia topo maps more, the kind of their proprietary topo maps, more than this one, which seems like a pretty generic topo map with it's just not my favorite. So that's another, you know, like, that's the one that you only have one set of topo maps that you can use with this watch. So that's it, you're stuck with it. If while you're in the map you press this button, these 3 little dots appear, and if you can cycle through them to use the controls, you know, if you're on the middle dot, those controls give you panning and whatever that's called. If you press it again, okay, now you're moving from side to side. Very slow, not super responsive. And if you go back to here, first dot, it's zooming. Now here you can move around with your finger, but you can't zoom or anything like that with your fingers. You can't rotate the map. It's stuck. You either have it always pointing north, or there's 2 options. I haven't found, like, you can't spin the map and things like that. I find that super important when I'm out in the field, because that's what okay, now I press the map. Okay, now it's gonna load the map again. So I find the interface for the map really strange. I'm not gonna go through all of the details. I know that there's some people that absolutely love this watch. They're fans. I don't get it. And if you look at the reviews, so after I started playing with it last night, I was like, am I missing something? First thing is like, oh, it's such a great watch, and you know, it has a flashlight, which is cool for $1,000. So you've got this really strange sort of ecosystem. I can't even call it an ecosystem, because an ecosystem is by definition something that works in harmony. You've got this system of software that's completely out of touch with each other. From my point of view, the device itself is underpowered. There's no way that it is anywhere close to the performance of an Apple Watch. And it feels like something that you would be using in 2005, 2010 tops. There's a reason why everyone ditched their handheld GPS devices for phones, because the phones are light years ahead of those devices now, and this feels like you're stepping back in time. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe my expectations for what this kind of device can do are too high. Everyone says it's great because it has long battery life to be able to track their activities for a long time, whereas the Apple Watch basically lasts a day, and you couldn't really do track or monitor an activity for more than an hour. It'll kill the battery. So that seems to be what this device is for. It's for looking at what you did and how you performed, and then sort of stats like body, metrics, which just aren't what interest me. That's just not what I do. And a lot of other things, like this old Garmin Instinct, can do a lot of those things. I'm fine with it. Heart rate, how far I went, good enough. If you want to see the kind of stuff that I do and how I navigate with my phone, I did an off-trail route where we navigated over a bunch of alpine terrain. I did that with Dan Durston. That'll give you an idea of what I'm doing. And we're always like looking at the geography, looking at the terrain, making decisions on the fly, looking at our phones, looking at the satellite images, looking at the topo map, making all of those decisions. And I was looking for something that would be able to do that. This just doesn't seem to be it. It doesn't seem to be there yet. I'm gonna send it back and just keep on using my iPhone. Not really where I wanted to be. I wanted a better solution, but for me, it just doesn't offer any advantages.